7,000 miles away from Rome, Georgia, the 209th Broadcast Operations Detachment, or BOD, deployed to Baghdad, Iraq with many lessons learned and hard work in between. But it's not the destination that counts, it's the journey. Welcome to the 209th BOD Global War on Terrorism documentary. I'm Master Sergeant Melissa Rolon. I'll try and answer some important questions about that journey. So sit back for the year in review. Terror invokes images of tragedy and fear. September 11, 2001 was all that and more. Certainly, it was a period of awakening for the American public. After all, terrorism was something that happened elsewhere, not on American soil. Since that act, nothing remains the same.
You see, this war came to us, not the other way around. The United States of America, when it was attacked on September 11th, realized that we lived in a world where you couldn't let threats gather, and that we lived in a world in which we had to have a different kind of Middle East if we were ever going to have a permanent peace.
Today, we've had a national tragedy. Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center. And I've ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks.
I was in Riverside, California, and a friend of mine, Michael Johnson, called me the morning of the attacks. And I was working at the broadcast center at the time, and I believe I was in the middle. We had the 410, so we worked a 4-day, 10-hour shifts. I think, I don't recall what day it was, but I know for the next 2 days I was glued to the TV. And was just obviously in shock initially.
After the first plane hit, we basically turned on the TV and watched the other plane hit, and then heard about the Pentagon. Kind of freaked me out because my dad worked at the Pentagon a lot at that time. He had just been there 2 or 3 days prior to 9/11, and he knew a couple people that were killed because it did hit the Army side.
See the Twin Towers is falling down, and I woke up in the middle of probably like after the first building was hit, before the second one went down, so I caught that on TV. And you're like, wow. They did not just run a plane into the Twin Towers. And
I couldn't really believe it was going on. And I really didn't understand the severity of it because I never actually knew what the Twin Towers really meant, what they were. I thought they were just some towers. I didn't realize they were actually buildings. So until I got to the lady's house and saw it on the television, I realized that something really bad was going on. And then, ever how long it was after that the Pentagon got hit, pretty scary, actually.
2004. President George Bush orders the activation of 50,000 additional troops, and the wheels set in motion, putting the 209th in Iraq no later than October 24, 2004. A scenario every service member can relate to these days. First, troops go to Afghanistan, and with hardly a moment for them to catch their breath, Iraq.
Well, this is the beginning of us going to Baghdad, first step. First step? Yep.
Learning on each deployment, you never are with someone 24/7. I keep saying 24/7, I'll probably say that throughout, but we're a soldier 24/7. And as reserve soldiers, you only see them on a drill weekend. So that challenge for me coming here on active duty with them is, I know what they do on the weekend. On Saturday when they come to drill, it's trying to get that civilian aspect out from them and show them or remind them of the soldier, the whole soldier concept that we have when they come into drill. And so I knew that that would take at least a month of training, and we didn't really have a month. If you think about it, we went to the MOB station, Fort Benning, early in October, and we left mid-October. And that's not enough time for reserve soldiers to get in their mind, hey, this is active duty. They don't know it until they step on the ground. I think Sergeant Major Mellinger says it best, boots on ground, although he didn't come up with that concept, but it's called boots on ground. Boots on ground means survival. Boots on ground means soldier skills. Boots on ground means tactical proficiency. And so that's the hardest challenge, coming over here with the reserve unit, period. And going into a deployment, there's no room for excuses, no room for lack of being responsible or professional at any level. And as leaders, NCOs, it's our duty to make sure that we mentor and train accurately so that we bring back all of our subordinates, peers alike, back in one piece, as I promised the loved ones back in Rome, Georgia during our home station activities. For the most part, the thought of going away for over a year to a strange country, away from your family and friends, is hard enough. Now add a war zone, and you might understand what went through the minds of the soldiers of the 209th. In September 2004, each member received that call, the one every soldier fears and anticipates at the same time. Part of the home station preparation phase is to ensure that the equipment that we need is packed, and before it's packed, make sure that it's operable. I mean, that's part of mission operation readiness, and on top of that, ensuring that all the personnel have their records scrubbed way before going to the MOB site, which is at Fort Benning, Georgia. When I say scrubbing the records, making sure that those that are promoted early before the deployment. Also making sure that any type of medical concerns are addressed prior to getting to the MOB station, and along with that, just ensuring that their physical fitness is in check way before we go to Fort Benning, Georgia.
This man is a sprinter. I want them to hear you. Detachment, attention! We rock the world!
On the command, fall out. Fall out. Spend time with your family. Or is it low first? Okay. And your timeline for that is 0945. Standing by the bus to low. Any questions? Most of these soldiers left a spouse, children, or significant other behind. Each of them faces an uncertain future in a country ravaged by war and terrorism. Soldiers like Specialist Cole Evil understands all too well what it feels like to leave a loved one behind, especially a wife that's pregnant.
We're going to Iraq. So, pretty much says it all, you know.
And November 29th of 2003, Colin Jeffrey Evil was born, and it's pretty cool guy. It's been really hard, you know, because I gotta look out for my wife, and it's not just about me anymore, it's about my family. So, and pretty much that's all I miss over here. I don't really care about whatever struggles, blah, blah, blah. Nothing. The only thing that really stresses me out over here is, you know, that I'm away from my family. You know, I'm glad to be over here helping, but I miss my family more than anything, so, you know.
Carrie. Autumn. Tori.
How you doing today?
Good.
Good, doing good. So, what's been going on today?
My dad's leaving and our mom's leaving for Iraq.
How do you feel about that?
Sad. Yeah. And happy.
And happy? Why's that?
Because they're leaving for 2 years or so.
You're happy because they're leaving for 2 years?
No, sad.
Well,
Of course.
it's because our mom and our dad is happy that they're going to be going, so I guess we have to be happy about it.
First time was really hard, but you know, it was really hard because we didn't know what to expect when we were getting over here. We didn't know if we were going to be sleeping in tents or how often we were going to get fired at or what. It was hard all around, not just leaving my son, but leaving my wife and leaving my friends and not knowing what was going to happen when I got here.
Morale's through the roof. I cannot be prouder of the soldiers of the 209th Broadcast Public Affairs Detachment. Everybody's rallied together. They've all pretty much risen up. Their true characters are showing through, which everybody's outstanding. And we're ready to go and get this mission done.
September 30th, 2004, mobilization phase. The soldiers of the 209th waved goodbye to Rome for at least a year in what was a first-class send-off by the city of Rome.
Y'all leaving there?
Several hours later, the unit arrives in Fort Benning, Georgia. The schedule, long and grueling. The training, usually 30 to 60 days of intense survival skills in a combat zone, turned into a 2-week period. When a unit goes to the mobilization site, the mobilization people, have their own training schedule that they have to go by. And when we got there, we kind of got there 2 or 3 hours earlier than what they anticipated. So they weren't really ready for us, and we weren't truly prepared for the training that they had prepared for us.
Going through that training, looking back on it now, man, it was tough. It was really hard getting through it because it was so condensed. But, you know, looking back at it now, I'm glad we went through it, because you want to at least know you want something to reach for. You want something to reach for and say, okay, in this type of situation, this is what I'm supposed to do. And actually reach back on whatever little training you've had and use it. And not just say, oh my God, what do we do?
Members work 7 days a week, sometimes getting a few hours of sleep at night. There's little time in a war zone for breaks or vacations. This is active duty, and everything is amped to the next level in preparation for what is about to come.
Everybody has to execute convoy, and that's where soldiers are getting hurt. So that's why we conduct this training here for everybody.
Most likely enemy activities along, which includes IEDs, ambushes.
So the big thing we try and get through folks here is we never tell them what they're doing. We always change the scenario and cause them to think and always react. So they're almost never right when they go on the lane, and it's not to beat them down or to make them look wrong, but to make them think, because in country, the enemy adapts as fast as we can.
October 16th, broadcast training began early. New equipment and training instructors assist us with the basics and improving our skills in order to hit the ground running, providing command and public information. October 22nd, the 209th departs Fort Benning for Pope Air Force Base, North Carolina. 48 hours later, it's wheels up for Kuwait. The waiting always seems to be the hardest part of the mobilization. Soldiers know it's time to grab food and sleep where they can.
Where are we at, sir?
I have no freaking clue. I guess they call it pack shed number 1.
And the time is?
Early. 3:30 a.m.
I'm waiting for a flight.
That's right. Someday we'll get out of here.
Well,
It's a typical military protocol for unit movements. The last groups are named the Left Behind Gang, would bring up the rear and arrive in Kuwait on the 18th of November.
Flexible, and that's probably one of the best words we could have for the leftover gang is flexible. And then towards the end there, we got another one when Watkins broke his arm. He ended up hanging out with us too. So really it all boiled down to, we're finished with our training, we're waiting around, and it's kind of a funny story for all of us, but we left at 2 o'clock in the morning from Fort Benning in a minivan with a U-Haul attached to the back of it. Threw our gear in the U-Haul and took off, and I probably wasn't the safest of trips. I think the Lord was watching over us on that one.
If the culture shock didn't get you, then seeing the real Middle Eastern desert for the first time might. As the main body advanced to Iraq, a secondary unit remained in Kuwait to handle equipment and other logistical affairs.
Our goal was to have our vehicles armored in Kuwait. We wanted to ensure that our vehicles would arrive into Baghdad with good armor on them for safety of our troops, and also to allow our vehicles to participate in convoys. I think some of the folks that were left behind, they really wanted to join the Advent up here in Baghdad, and naturally, when your unit's separated, it's not good for a unit. It's good to be together, but however, our mission required us to leave a team back behind into Baghdad. During a deployment, it's inevitable that at times, you're deployed for a year. That's a pretty lengthy period of time. We're all away from home, we're away from our loved ones, we're in a strange land, we're learning a new mission. We're all going to face challenges. Yes, it's exciting when you finally arrive to Baghdad. We spent time training at Fort Benning preparing for this. We spent time at the home station preparing for the mission. We came through Camp Buehring preparing for it. And everyone was excited to reach the final destination in Baghdad to drive on with the mission. Naturally, there'll be times when we have some ups and we have some downs.
I had just gotten up, I had just walked away from my desk and was going into the latrine. And when I came back, stepping through the office door to the CPIC, it was like opening up the door outside. I mean, I of course felt the shock. And then stepping back into that room after the windows and everything had fallen out, it was like something out of a movie.
This is a rocket attack. Just planned a little while over there. We don't know what it is.
Terrorism, to my mind, is the indiscriminate use of violence to achieve your ends, whatever those ends are, political, economic, social. Without regard to the lives of innocents, without regard to other means of redressing these grievances, it's an attempt to sow terror, just as the word suggests.
The freedom deficit is what has produced the ideologies of hatred that led people to fly airplanes into a building on a fine September day. People don't want to be suicide bombers. People don't want to be suicide hijackers. But somehow the ideologies of hatred in this region have become so great that human beings have been willing to do that to other human beings.
I think NATO is undergoing the most fundamental political and military transformation in its history, adapting to the new security challenges. The terrorism, the terrorist threats, the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, failed states. So these are very challenging times indeed, I can say.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. Saddam Hussein was captured Saturday, December 13th at about 8:30 p.m. local in a cellar in the town of Ad-Duar, which is about 15 kilometers south of Tikrit.
Search the internet for Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. You'll find one article claiming he's been captured,
another naming him Osama bin Laden's right-hand man, yet another claiming the two are rivals in the deadliest of competitions. One constant is the blood on his hands, the beheading of Nick Berg, the responsibility he so readily shoulders for hundreds of deaths through car bombings and other attacks. What we also know is this: his network is showing signs of collapsing around him. Over the past several months, coalition and Iraqi security forces have captured or killed more than 20 of Zarqawi's most trusted lieutenants and network members. Zarqawi himself came within minutes of capture in late February when coalition forces closed in on his vehicle. While Zarqawi escaped, his driver, Abu Usama, was captured. And once captured, he did what most of Zarqawi's apprehended followers seem to all do very well: talk. Usama said this about Zarqawi's near capture. Zarqawi's once supposedly sturdy group of advisors and loyalists appear to be rapidly diminishing, one after the other, killed or captured. Terror cell leaders, propaganda chiefs, bomb makers, drivers, all in coalition hands, and all telling stories that reflect an organization that is anything but organized. A prime example: a letter reportedly written by a loyalist expressing serious misgivings about the direction in which he and others were being led.
The morale has weakened and the lines of the Mujahideen have become separated due to some leaders' actions. We have leaders who are not capable of being good leaders. We have tested them and found them incapable.
It reinforces something that we've been thinking for quite some time, that this network that Zarqawi has is in fact a loose network. And by the estimates of one of his leaders, one of his own leaders, there's incompetency in the ranks. We certainly knew that. There is disaffected personnel. There's low morale in some cases, and questions about Zarqawi abandoning them.
Consequently, Zarqawi has become an isolated criminal, apparently on the run without a support network. All indications point to supply and cash flow problems, with coalition forces breathing down his neck.
He's more and more isolated. We have captured most of his inner circle. So not only does he have to worry because we're chasing him every night, but he has to worry about the loyalty of the guys around him. So it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
قد يجوز قتل الترس ولا يكون فيه اختلاف إن شاء الله، وذلك إذا كانت المصلحة ضرورية كلية قطعية، فمعنى كونها ضرورية أنها لا يحصل الوصول إلى الكفار إلا بقتل الترس، ومعنى أنها كلية أنها قاطعة لكل الأمة حتى يحصل من قتل الترس مصلحة كل المسلمين.
It's been a long year marked by accomplishments and milestones, starting with AFN's coverage of the Battle of Fallujah.
Explosive actually that we found connected to it. We disassembled that. Got booster charges over there. RPG rockets filling the crate.
It's been a worthwhile experience. Like when I left, before coming out here, my brother-in-law Ray, he told me that, you know, you're going to be part of history out there, you know.
Babylon is the cradle of civilization. The Palace of Nebuchadnezzar goes back 2,500 years. It's an important part of our history, of biblical history in the Old Testament.
This is kind of where civilization started. And I'm just going to let them know that whether they're for or against while we're here, you know, we pretty much volunteered and we came here. And we're trying to better this country, whether a lot of people think it's a good reason or a bad reason.
I have great respect. I totally appreciate every time they walk out that door and come back with the story. I think that is something that's tremendous, something that I, as a first sergeant, as you call me, I will take back as a fond and loving memory, a cherished memory of the 209, is that all of my soldiers are not afraid to go out there and get that story and tell that story. It's a passion that they have. It's a desire, obviously, that they want.
After a person goes out, broadcaster goes out, collects their particular story, does all their A and B roll, that is the interview as well as the video footage, they'll come back here into shop. The policy or their standard is 3 days after they get back, they know that they will have a story going into the newscast, and that, you know, is in a vacuum. That is, if nothing else goes wrong, if nothing else happens, if nothing else pops up, then they know that they're 3 days after they get back, their first story is going into the newscast. We'll take the lead from that story and we will put it into the overall newscast script. And so once we put that script together, then we'll come down here and we'll do what we call shoot the ins and outs. After we get the newscast script together, we'll shoot the ins and outs, put that onto a tape, and once we have that onto tape, then we take it up to our newscast producer.
Right in the middle of history, the 209th could be found. In one of the most historic events, Iraq's January elections, a new country was reborn from the ashes of war. Army Staff Sergeant Eric Ritterby has more.
On January 30th, more than 8 million Iraqis ignored terrorist threats and took to the polls. Citizens in every corner of the country made their way to the voting booth. Lines stretched around street corners, and the 209th BOD was there every step of the way. The historic day was a success thanks to the help of the coalition. In a letter from the interim Prime Minister to the commanding general of MNFI, the Iraqi government thanked the U.S. military for their part.
Ideas bleed across borders. This could be the beginning of something. It could also fall apart, but you know, they've got to try, and the election is the foundation.
We are tired of being afraid. We want to have the freedom. It's enough for killing, and we want to live, and we want to another kind of living.
Using more than 500 polling centers, Iraqis elected a transitional National Assembly. The BOD aired hourly updates on the election, and as the months passed, we followed the progress of the Constitution. Written in the same building the 209th worked, the draft was submitted in late August. The Iraqi people then waited until October to decide the fate of the document. With this Constitution, Iraqis will have a checks and balance system like the U.S., but it's also unique in its own ways. The Constitution was the last major event the BOD covered before their replacements arrived.
You know, it takes a special soldier to be able to just fall in on a new unit and go to work and accomplish the mission. And that's one thing that I've learned about the reserves. Is just about every soldier in the reserves is that versatile and that willing to help another unit. And this is just, I enjoy doing what I do. I think I'm pretty good at it. A lot of my soldiers think I'm good at it. So this is what I do. So I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon.
The Diamondbacks shut out the Cubs 6-0.
My liner.
That's right, stay locked, freedom ready for that. Come up later, we got Seether.
I plan on telling people that we're over here for a reason. Not everyone agrees with the reason why we're over here, and I don't even know if I agree with it, but we're here, and we're here to do a job, and we're here to do it well. And I mean, it sounds so stupid when I say, but I really have enjoyed this deployment. I know not everybody can say that, but I love the job I'm doing, the people I've met, and the work that I do has made it, you know, and that's another reason I don't know if I'd want to re-enlist, because if I did get deployed again, I know it wouldn't be as good as this has been, because you know, because of the people I work with, the people I've met, and the work that I do, I don't think it could get any better.
And then you could look that way. Oh my How sweet is that?
You alright?
Yeah.
Didn't scare you?
She was like, guys, you're setting me up. She's like,
Keep filming, get her crying, get her crying.
What is she talking about, class? Put my makeup on. Okay.
As the unit settled into their respective roles, those with prior experience began to shine through. Specialist Renee Mahan spent a year in Afghanistan as a public affairs officer for the Coalition Joint Civil Military Operations Task Force, the forerunner for the Army's current procedure for conducting civil affairs in conjunction with offensive operations. She tells us about the lessons she learned in a war zone.
All these major networks, we call them, you know, the body count stations, you know what I mean? Radio, everything, you know, the body count stations, because we don't want to be that. You know what I mean? We don't want people to turn on AFN and see body counts. We don't want them to turn on the radio and hear body counts, simply because we know that we're in a hostile environment. We know this. So we know that unfortunate tragedies are going to occur. But why did these people lose their lives? Let's focus on that. Let's focus on why they're over here. They're over here to help the Iraqi people, to help rebuild this country, to help this nation get, you know, back on its feet. So that's why they're over here. They're rebuilding schools, villages, their bridges. I mean, covering that and getting that out, you know, was our main mission, basically. Trying to get Fox and CBS and NBC to say, hey, come look, they're building this school over here, you know what I mean? There's crazy stuff, and no one wanted to cover it. And so I guess having that be our mission every single day for the period of time we were over there, I guess it made a big difference. It made me understand how important my role was in it. As small as it is, how important my role is, I guess, in the overall American perception of what's going on over here. I think what we do covering and we don't just cover the good aspects of it, but I mean, I feel like we tell the real story, you know, as opposed to the the story of whatever network, you know, is covering it, you know, because they already come in with an agenda. They already come in with their own spin on things.
You know, our texts play a crucial role. I think everybody realizes just how significant they play. They keep everything going, everything operating. A lot of times our texts are not in the limelight. However, they're the ones that keep radio going. They're the ones that keep ENG going. They keep the press conferences going. They play such a crucial role. And as we proceeded through this deployment, everyone has acknowledged how key the texts are. The texts keep everything going. The texts have learned a lot. It just truly amazes me looking back, reflecting on this deployment, just how much they've learned and how much they've done.
This is a people here that have truly suffered through Saddam Hussein's regime for 30+ years, and that in itself is so sad. So why can't we as Americans, as coalition forces, come over here to teach them, to show them we care in different ways?
Iraq is a land of mass graves. It's a museum of crime. And we have about 1 million people missing and disappeared in this country. Given the type of threats and the type of terrorism which is unprecedented in the history of mankind that we are going through, that creates also certain fear among the population to come forward and inform about the locations of this and that site. But with time, so we'll find more and more.
Yeah, it was 1969. I was general assistant in the army for the Kurdish people, KDP. and the Saddam Hussein's army is coming to my city in 6 o'clock in the morning. Around by noon, he killed 10,000 people. And from these 10,000 people, about 5, my family, my wife, my kids. Now, my youngest kid was 6 months old, and my oldest son was 9 years old.
It is a horrific scene because of the way in which the murder was conducted. We had a firing line on the east side of this trench, which indicates to us that the shooter stood outside the grave and shot them in situ. They fell upon each other, as you see them here, and in some cases they were huddled together. We have recovered mothers with infants in their arms, mothers with children clinging to their legs. It's hard.
Criminals should be brought before justice, but we need to give a sense to the life of millions of Iraqis and to support them to go ahead with their lives. Most of the Iraqis, they have lost several members of their families, several loved ones, and it's difficult. Imagine yourself losing your parents, or you're losing your wife and your child, and how would you feel as a survivor? We need to identify maximum the whereabouts of all these missing and disappeared, and to bury them properly in a dignified manner. And I would like in the end to thank everyone who has helped this nation to be free from dictatorship of Saddam Hussein's regime, one of the most ruthless totalitarian dictatorship on the face of earth since the Second World War. And without the support of many in the coalition in uniform who help us to be free.
When you go back home, it's going to be a bigger change because things have evolved around you. People died, people lived, people married, people divorced, people had birthdays, children were born, people had afflictions, people had happiness. It all happened as a result of you not being there. Some of the 209th lost loved ones back home. For them and many others, the world they returned to from deployment will forever be changed. Despite the hardships, one thing is for sure. The 209th learned a little about each other and what we do to help others, giving them the same freedoms we enjoy, and after all, that's probably the greatest gift we can leave behind. The 209th would like to say thank you and goodbye as the 206 BOD takes over. They will tell different military stories with the same level of experience and professionalism we strive for, and always giving it the care it deserves. It has been a privilege serving all of you. From all of us here at the 209th, the sun sets on another broadcast day. I'm Master Sergeant Melissa Rolland, and we'll see you on the other side. Until then, keep safe.